You've had this feeling before. You look around, and it seems like everyone else is moving through life with a plan, like they know where they're going, like they have one clear direction, while you're the only one still figuring it out as you go. Meanwhile, you're the one who doubts, who backtracks, who changes their mind. Some days it feels like you're behind on a life everyone else has already figured out. You see someone your age who already has the career, the relationship, the routine that seems to hold together, and some quiet part of you wonders what they know that you don't. But here's the thing, almost nobody notices. Nobody has lived their life before. Everyone is living it for the first time. There's no category of people who got a practice run, who rehearsed this in advance, who already knew how it would go. The 45-year-old CEO who seems like he's always known what he was doing. This is the first time he's been 45. The first time he's run a company at this scale. He's improvising. Same as you. The parent who seems to know exactly how to raise their child is raising, for the first time, this specific child in this specific moment, with no manual and no dress rehearsal. Nobody skips the beginning. Everyone starts from zero, every single time, in whatever version of new they happen to be facing. So why does the impression feel so strong, so universal, so hard to shake? What people show isn't what's actually happening. There's a sociologist, Erving Goffman, who spent a good part of his career observing one simple thing. In social life, nobody shows everything. We sort, we select. We build a presentable version of ourselves, and that version, only that one, is what other people see. Goffman calls this the distinction between the front stage and the backstage. What we show in public is the front stage, an organized performance, where the hesitation has already been edited out. What happens in private, in our heads, in the moments nobody's watching, that's the backstage. And by definition, nobody else ever sees the backstage. Take a simple example. A coworker speaks up in a meeting, states an idea with confidence, seems to have thought of everything already. What you see is 30 seconds of clarity. What you don't see is the sleepless night before, the 3 versions of the email he wrote and deleted, the moment he almost canceled the meeting because he wasn't sure of anything. You're comparing your backstage to his front stage. And that comparison can never be fair, because they're not the same kind of thing. Or take someone you follow online, whose life seems to move in a straight line, a career that makes sense, a solid routine, a clear direction. What you're seeing is a summary, selected after the fact. What you're not seeing is the 6 months they spent wondering if they'd made the right call, the version of the post they didn't publish, the doubt that got left out, because doubt doesn't fit the format. The doubt didn't disappear, it just stayed backstage, because that's not what gets shown. Even the small, everyday version of this counts. Someone tells a story at dinner about a decision they made, moving cities, leaving a job, ending something, and the story comes out clean. Here's what happened, here's why, here's what I learned. What almost never gets told is the version from inside the decision, before it had a shape. The version where they genuinely didn't know. By the time a story gets told out loud, it's already been edited into something that makes sense. That's not dishonesty. It's just what happens to an experience once it's been turned into language. It's not lying, it's necessary. It's worth being precise here. This doesn't mean people are lying. Goffman is clear about this. You can't function while constantly exposing the raw chaos of what's happening inside you. A social interaction needs a minimum of coherence to hold together. If everyone showed every hesitation, every doubt, every contradictory version of themselves without any filter, social life would simply be unworkable. Imagine asking someone "How are you?" and getting the real, unfiltered answer every time, not the 3-word version, but the actual tangle of half-formed thoughts running underneath. Nobody could have a conversation that way. The simplification isn't a flaw in how people interact. It's the thing that makes interaction possible at all. So we simplify, we stabilize, We present a version that holds together, even when nothing inside actually feels stable. That's not dishonesty. It's the condition that makes an exchange with another person possible at all. But this has a consequence almost nobody accounts for. What you see in other people is never the process. It's the result of the process. Once it's been cleaned up, organized, made presentable, and that result is what you end up comparing, without even noticing, to your own raw, unfinished process. The comparison that can never be fair. This is where the mistake lives. You never compare your backstage to someone else's backstage. You always compare your backstage to their front stage. And structurally, that comparison is lost before it even starts. Not because you're less capable, but because you're comparing two things that aren't in the same category. Picture two people going through the exact same period of doubt about their career. The first keeps it to herself, keeps moving, and a year later tells a simplified version, "I changed direction because it made sense." The second is in the middle of it right now, with nothing but the chaos to work with. No story yet, no distance yet. If these two people cross paths, the second one will inevitably feel behind. Not because she is, but because she's looking at a finished performance, already written, while she's still backstage. The gap isn't a gap in ability, it's a gap in timing. One is telling a finished story, the other is still living the unfinished one. This is also why looking back at your own past can feel strange. A version of you from 2 years ago, mid-decision, uncertain, probably felt exactly as lost as you feel right now. But from where you're standing today, that period looks resolved. You know how it turned out, so it reads as a clean story with a clear arc. You do to your own past what you do to other people's present. You see the finished version and forget the mess it came from. Which means the together people you're comparing yourself to today will 1 year from now look back at this exact moment and see it as more coherent than it actually felt. What's actually happening underneath? And here's the reversal. If you could actually see the backstage of anyone, really see it, not the version told after the fact, you'd find roughly the same thing everywhere. Decisions made without total certainty. Moments where nothing is clear. Contradictory versions of the same person, depending on the day, the mood, whatever just happened. This isn't an exception you're carrying alone. It's the normal condition of anyone moving through something that doesn't come with instructions. And a life never comes with instructions. Everyone moves forward with incomplete information. Everyone makes decisions without being fully sure. Everyone doubts in private and looks solid, sometimes, in public. The difference between people isn't how much doubt they carry. It's simply how comfortable each person is with presenting a coherent version of themselves to the outside world. Some people are more at ease with that presentation. Some have had more practice at it, or more reason to develop it, or simply a personality that leans toward composure. Others show more of the seams. But none of that says anything about who's figured it out and who hasn't. It only says who's more skilled at building a front stage, a completely different skill from actually knowing where you're going. The performance has a cost, even when it works. There's another layer to this worth sitting with. Presenting a coherent front stage isn't free. It takes effort. The colleague who always seems composed in meetings isn't composed by accident. Somewhere, he's doing the work of managing what gets shown and what doesn't. That management is itself a kind of labor, invisible in the same way the doubt underneath it is invisible. Which means the people who look the most together are often the ones spending the most energy on the presentation itself, not necessarily the ones who need it least. Confidence on the outside doesn't tell you how much effort went into building it, or how much is being held back to maintain it. Sometimes the most polished front stage belongs to the person working hardest to keep the backstage from leaking through. Not because they have less doubt, but because they've decided, consciously or not, that showing it would cost them something. This matters because it flips a common assumption. We tend to think the calmer someone looks, the less there must be underneath. But calm is often a performance layered on top of something, not evidence that nothing needed performing in the first place. The visible ease can be the product of real internal effort, not the absence of it. Why this is easy to know and hard to feel? Here's the strange part. None of this is a secret. Say it out loud to anyone. Everyone's uncertain, we just don't show it. And they'll agree instantly. Nobody actually thinks other people have life figured out. Not if you ask them directly. And yet the feeling persists anyway. You can know this intellectually and still feel behind the next time you scroll past someone's clean, resolved-looking life. That gap between knowing and feeling is worth naming, because it explains why this isn't something you fix once and move past. The comparison resets every time you're shown another front stage, which now happens constantly, in a feed, in a conversation, in a passing glance at someone else's life. Each time, the same unfair math runs automatically, their edited version against your unedited one. Knowing the math is unfair doesn't stop it from running. It just means you can catch it after the fact and discount the result instead of taking it as evidence about your own life. So what do you do with that? Maybe the answer isn't to stop comparing yourself to others. That's hard, probably unrealistic, and maybe not even the right goal. It's not to wait until you have every answer before moving forward either, because nobody, ever, has had every answer before moving forward. Maybe it's simpler than that. Stop treating doubt like a malfunction. Doubt isn't proof that you're behind on a life everyone else has already worked out. It's the part of the process other people never show either. It's not an obstacle standing between you and the real thing. It is the real thing, in its most honest form, the one that hasn't been staged yet. And the next time you look at someone who seems to have it all figured out, remember this: you're not looking at their life. You're looking at their front stage. What happens backstage, nobody ever shows, not even them.